Are we recording? I see the light up on the upper left, so we are. So very good. Well, hello, Estella. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
Well, and I was looking at your resume, and oh my gosh, poet, author, teacher, performing artist, all of these wonderful things. What led you to all of that in your life? Were you destined to be a writer and an artist?
Yes, yes, I believe I was. I've been writing since I was a child, and I just branched out and played with all the genres, and I teach all the genres, and that's me.
Here you are. So what led you to the Blackburn story and Freedom Clothes? When was it the first time that you heard their story, and what was it that just absolutely captured you about that story?
Yes, you know, the Blackburn story starts, of course, in Africa. And I am concerned with the quest for liberation, our quest for liberation in the continuum, you know, from slavery all the way through. So, sort of like August Wilson chronicling the African American experience through playwriting, I experiment with all the genres and trying to just get a clearing and a way out of this. And so my one of my earlier books was The Middle Passage, 105 Days.
Mm-hmm.
Middle Passage, 105 Days, which, you know, it's faction, as Alex Haley called his roots. I take liberties, but it's after my travels in Ghana and Mali and Tanzania and South Africa and Kenya. I I I finally got a grasp on what exactly is going on, and I did visit Elmina Castle in Ghana, and I wrote this piece. And then afterwards, I teaching it. It was a play and all that. It's and it was an exhibition too with Robert Douglas's portrayals. And then I did Truth in the Territory, which moved me a little further up, and that was 14 stations on the Underground Railroad. And I worked with my brother when I was in New York for 12 years, Houston Conwill,
Mm-hmm.
and we did site-specific art installations all around the country. So in most of the in a lot of the major cities, we have major monuments. Um, and in the Buffalo region, New York, the line into Canada, we did the Stations Project and celebrated families on the underground who participated in helping. And Castellani Art Museum did that project. And the people in the community, the grassroots, got so excited about the Stations Project that they designed a pilgrimage, a walk a mile in my shoes pilgrimage. And they went from way south through the north into 14 different sites. It was covered extensively. We did libation ceremonies and gathered oral histories and all of that with and into Canada, across the Rainbow Bridge into Harriet Tubman's space at St. Catherine, and visited her grave. And this resulted from it, And after that, I could never teach Frederick Douglass the same.
Right.
I could never teach Sojourner Truth and all of the abolitionists the same way. And when I moved back to Louisville, I became intrigued with Thornton and Lucie. It's a different aspect of the Underground Railroad. And Blaine Hudson, was my friend, my dear friend, and I said, look, I don't have to create the will. You've written this book. Let me see it. And this was a footnote in his book on the Underground Railroad in Kentucky, a footnote. And I said, Blaine, this is the tale. And he had gotten it from the Fieldson Historical Society. It was a little caption in the bottom of a chest. And I spun this tale from those two lines.
Wow. And then you think about their journey. I mean, to escape from Louisville, to get on a steamboat, Cincinnati, Detroit, busted out of jail, finding freedom in Canada. And that was a footnote. That must have been so striking to you. Their lives were a footnote. And when you find out about their lives, you were so struck by the sacrifice, the fullness of their lives. How does that make you feel that, I mean, with that footnote and to turn it into a story, that became a mission, I'm assuming, for you, that they can't just be a footnote.
Yes, yes. That's funny. You all have that footprints project that you're planning.
With
And
the Unknown Project, with known and unknown names in the Blackburn
names, yes. And you're talking about footnotes and footprints. I feel as if all of these projects that my brother and I did in the 12 years I was in New York are footprints all over America, and your project is going to make that footprint here in Louisville. I wrote the book, and then I started thinking about it, and I gathered about 20 or so Black artists from Louisville to recreate the artifacts that are spoken of in the book.
Mm-hmm.
And so from there we had an exhibition at the Clifton Center, and it was wonderful. It was a 2-day event. We had a reading. My theater group had a reading of the first chapter, and it was wonderful. And we had a sit down. We viewed the exhibition first, and we had a sit down supper, and it was a wonderful event. We had Ed Hamilton participated. William Duffy had a drawing. Ed had some of his sculpture. We had Lucille Allen. Karen Davis recreated the shawl, the prayer shawl that Lucie made as for other escaped people into Canada to welcome them.
Let me ask you, Estella, why was it so important for you to tell their story? We've seen so much about unknowns and knowns, and what was it about them that compelled you, that you said, I have got to bring light and life to their story?
Well, the first thing is that they escaped.
Right.
The first thing is, number one, they escaped. Number two, it was fascinating to me, especially with all the discussion of Moynihan, with the discussion of Black families not being intact and not loving each other and not caring, and the fragmentation that we go through, that this was a married couple when it was illegal to be married. They didn't even recognize marriage. They had the jumping the broom celebrations to codify it. And this was a married couple, and they struggled together, and they made their flight. And that's the second thing. And the third thing is that, they were captured, and that they summoned the community, they summoned the grace, if you will, to go beyond that point, which is very, very telling, which is where we are now. with the exhaustion from Black Lives Matter, with the exhaustion from the the uh, the trauma coming from the White House, and with the exhaustion of the virus, with everything that we're undergoing, it's like we're at a point where you're down. But even at that point, there is grace, and it must be summoned. And that's what they did. And it's very telling because they didn't escape by themselves. You know, she, two free Black women came into her cell and one of them exchanged clothes with her, did a Jesus move and took her place.
The story is unbelievable if people
Yes.
don't know it. I
And
mean,
then,
it's a jaw-dropping story.
yes.
It
And
really is.
then the community, it didn't stop there. The community of multicultural people came in and busted him out of jail, and he freed and went on to Canada. Now, that's enough of a story right there.
Right.
But he did a Harriet Tubman move and came back for his mother. That's what I found out. And that was astounding. That was even more telling with the notion of Black family, Black love, Black caring. And it just busted through so many of the stereotypes.
And
You
the
know,
importance of it and the sacrifice. And one thing that I read in an interview with you, you talked about the ripples in time. You were thinking about that same river and later Muhammad Ali throwing in his Olympic medal and just how things have changed, but how much some things haven't changed.
yes.
What do you think about that the Blackburns, I mean, what would they think now coming back and looking at Louisville, do you think?
Mm, mm, mm. My, those ripples in time. I know the rules for writing a narrative. I just violated them in that tale. I know that that's not the way, I interrupted that tale 3 or 4 times to make it known this notion of the continuum. And that as he stood on the banks of the Ohio River, had he been able to see, he would have seen Muhammad Ali struggling towards liberation and throwing his gold medal in the river. And when he got to Ohio, had he been able to see, he could feel, but could he, if had he been able to see, he would have seen the Underground Railroad spring up from the the institute there, the National Institute there, spring up on the banks, on the very, very bank that he was traveling. And if he had been able to see on his way into Detroit, he would have not been surprised as he would have been with Muhammad Ali or the Underground Railroad. He would have been able to see the degradation that continues, the challenges that we still have. And I have picture after picture, a litany of Black men and women who were murdered, and who consistently continue to be murdered. That part would not surprise the Thornton and Lucie at all.
So let me ask you this, Estella, because we talk about, their inspiring story and the sacrifice and the love and all of that. And we see everything playing out today with the protests. And you talked about that exhaustion, but summoning that to keep moving forward. Where do you find hope at a time that it is difficult at times to find hope? Do you see it around anywhere? And if so, where? Where do you find the hope?
Hmm. That's, that's a funny question, Rachel.
I mean, is there? Do you see any? I mean,
you know, I deal in continuum. I deal with continuum. Um, I deal with continuum. I look at this book here that I wrote for you all. This is what I know about courage. You need a Black Wells. story in the 1965 Voting Rights Act. That was a footprint. You know, that was a footprint. That was a footprint. And that's what museums do. They refresh our memory. You know, they let us know how far we've come, that it's not rock bottom. You know, they let us help us to remember. And the mission is, I wrote this down so that I could be very clear: to tell the truth rather than memorialize non-historical fiction. Now I write fiction and take all kinds of liberties, but the the the, the mission for the museum is to tell the truth. You know, to tell the truth rather than memorialize non-historical fiction, which is what we're dealing with a lot today. The only hope is that the truth be told clearly. You know, with the truth being told clearly, you will have memorials that are not lies, you know, and therein lies the hope. You know, you will have more than the cannon in the park. Or when I go to the in New York at the Museum of History and Science, you can't enter it without seeing Roosevelt on his big horse and the Native American on one side barefooted walking, and the African American looking disheveled on the other side walking. You know, that is that's not the truth. You know, that's not the truth. And when the truth is told clearly, you know, my brother and I did these projects from Ring Shout, the African burial ground, the new federal building in New York, to San Francisco, Martin Luther King Jr.'s memorial, a 40-foot waterfall in the middle of the city, to the center of Chicago, when they built their new library there. The whole rotunda is ours. You know, the truth is written there clearly. And I would say that some of the discussion that we're having with about structures around the United States and the world is because some of our work of laying it out, of making the truth visible, and people hear it and something breaks in them, you know, something breaks in them. So you have the numbers of the Black Lives Matter movement swelling with people who are of different races, ethnicities, genders, and beliefs, you know, because the truth wins out. The truth wins out. I'm very excited about just the image of Kamala standing with Joe Biden.
Right. And then, and then of course, we'll see how that plays out. I do want to end one final question with you. And I do appreciate what you wrote for us. We're hoping to get that in that play festival if we get that up and running, right, in this pandemic. So you and I will touch base on that. And I thank you for that, because I can't wait to see it. So leave that for me so I can read it. One thing that I also read in that interview that I had read that you had done, there, I think it was a young woman who may have said to you, somebody kept saying, when are they going to get over it? And your answer to that question, do you remember that? I'd love to make that the final word, that I think it was a young woman whose father maybe or something had said, when are they going to get over all of this?
Yeah, she said that her father said, when are they going to get over this? When are they going to stop? And I told her, we'll get over it when it's over. You know, Take that
And it's
back to
not
your
over.
father and tell him, when it's over, we'll be over it.
I thought that answer was fantastic, Estella.
Thank you. Thank
And
you.
it has been such an honor for me to interview you today, and I really appreciate it. And thanks for your work and educating us about history and the truth.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.